Nation of Fitin10, it is day 30 and we are heading right into week 5. Of course, halfway point is approaching us. And this is a strong reminder that you need to account for your calories. You need to account for the amounts of foods that you have. Certainly it's great to make, quote, healthy choices, whatever that means to you. This is important, but ultimately, when it comes to fat loss, we need to control our energy intake. There's only one source of energy intake, right? That is our diet, right? Our dietary intake of fluids and, of course, food. So, I'm going to remind you, it is super, super important for you to measure things out, and of course, do your best to accurately reflect what you're eating in your food journal. Okay, make the best choices you can, the most accurate choices, the most reasonable estimates. Ultimately, they are all estimates. We're never going to get things 100%, but as close to perfection as possible. That's what we're shooting for. We're always striving for perfection. We're always striving for most importantly, progression, right? But striving for perfection is really about steps in progression, right? Okay, more of your feedback here. Is there anything you'd like me to cover in this week's video series? Curious, this person writes, curious about muscle rolling, if there's something worth incorporating pre or post workout. All right, so I have not looked into this since this goes back to 2000, and I was taking a course, and I took this course in 2000 and I want to say maybe 2011 or 12. And the data at that point, there was nothing that suggested that rolling had any kind of, and again, that was just the data at the time, that rolling presented any form of faster recovery or aid in injury prevention or helping to overcome injury. Now, I would think that this would matter in terms of perhaps the way you're rolling, what you're using to roll with, how long you're rolling, what we're rolling. Are we rolling trigger points or knots or an overstretched muscle? What exactly are we speaking of here? So I think this is really a hard one to pinpoint, and I think it's a bit ignorant for me to make the comments I just did, but that's what the data seemed to suggest when it came to rolling in general. And this was specifically, I should preface this now that it's coming back to me, this was specifically about foam rolling, in fact. Certainly I can tell you, and I'm assuming this is what you mean by rolling, but you could roll with, for example, I always get really bad knotting and extreme tightness in my subscap. You can see it in this shoulder, actually. This shoulder is actually forward, and I have not been doing my rehab, so I got to get on that. There you go. There's something I need to be more accountable to. I always get tightness in my teres minor up into my supraspinatus and also my subscap. Basically, a lot of the muscles almost all the muscles of the rotator, and a little bit too in my rhomboid. So basically, all the muscles up around the shoulder area, they get excessively tight, and so I will usually use a golf ball, which I haven't done in a long time, and I will put my weight onto it. I'll do it on a carpeted surface, so there's a little bit of give. And I'll find those areas that are really triggering, and I'll actually go through some movement of the arm, just some general movement of the arm. And that helped me tremendously. Now, that would not be considered foam rolling, obviously. That's a little bit different, but the point is it's about pressure on the muscle, essentially. So pressure on the muscle makes a difference. The foam rolling, which I'm speaking about, and the data at the time, didn't seem to, there was no evidence to suggest, no overwhelming evidence at least, to suggest that it helped in muscle recovery or that it helped in muscle tightness. I would think it would help with muscle tightness, at least at least from a personal experience, an anecdotal experience, I think it would. I don't roll personally. I just find it incredibly painful. Probably I should roll. Maybe that would, alleviate some of the painfulness or the tightness that I have in some of my muscles. So I wouldn't rule it out. But from the data, and again, this is going back to 2011-12, and this is something I haven't looked into as of recently, it didn't seem to suggest any kind of benefit, any real benefit in terms of recovery, in terms of muscular recovery, or in terms of injury prevention, specifically those two things. But if anybody has any information on this, I'll be happy to hear from you. Okay, let's go on to the next question here. This person writes, I am trying hard to improve my meal planning. I feel like I don't eat enough. I have a problem with appetite, digestion problems, and food sensitivity. It's very challenging for me. I'm doing my best though. I'm getting better at meal planning and variety. This challenge is making me want to do better. I might have to contact somebody to help me. I have to see a naturopath first. Okay, yeah, digestive issues. This could very likely be associated with specific foods that you're eating, of course. I hate saying this because I used to secretly make fun of people when they would talk about gluten, but I'm actually gluten sensitive. Very gluten sensitive. In fact, if I have gluten, I will get quite bloated. And I will, if I have gluten, let's say the night, I had some gluten last night. I had a cheat meal last night, which involved gluten. And I woke up this morning actually quite foggy headed. I tend to feel like almost, I don't want to say hungover, because I can't really describe hungover. I've only been hungover a couple times in my life, and that was a long, long time ago. But maybe something like what hungover might feel like. I just feel a little bit out of it. So not sick, but I just feel out of it. A little bit I more than anything, I feel foggy headed. Anyways, coming back to your point here, yeah, you probably need to do maybe some sort of elimination diet, perhaps, or maybe just even doing a simple blood test to look at food sensitivities and look at the foods that perhaps you ought to stay away from. This could have something to do with anything from hydrochloric acid production in the stomach, perhaps, or maybe there is some prebiotic, probiotic type deficiency there. I'm not quite sure, or maybe it's just specific foods, but that's something definitely you want to take up with, I think probably a naturopath, or at least somebody who is qualified in this area to help you. So name something specific you need help with. A, B's, C's of meal planning. How am I doing for time here? 8 minutes. Okay, I'll talk about that more tomorrow because I'm at 8 minutes. And let's get to the message of the day. Day 30. Reset, readjust, refocus as many times as you need to. Just don't quit. As I mentioned to you, this is the week of quitting. This is the week where in all my previous challenges, not wholly speaking, not entirely speaking, I should say, it's in other weeks too, but generally speaking, if there are people that tend to drop out, and there's usually a couple, depending on the size of my challenge, there's usually a couple that drop out. It tends to happen in this week, heading into the halfway point. So I'm going to remind you to reset, readjust, refocus as many times as you need to. Just don't quit. Remember, the only way you will not make progress is if you quit. I guarantee you will make progress if you keep going. Okay? Working towards perfection. If you're currently doing 50%, let's work towards 60%. Let's work towards 60%. Don't try to work to 100%. Let's work to 60%. Let's get 60% down. And then once we get 60% down and we can handle that, let's work towards 70%. Something like that. Progression. Progression is so important because sometimes, for whatever reason, things can be overwhelming, things can be really hard. Everybody has a different background, everybody has a different wiring, and I can't speak to that. Well, I can speak to it, but I can't speak to that in terms of you because I don't know you that well. It'd be very hard because I'm speaking to many of you, so I'm going to say it one more time. Reset, readjust, refocus as many times as you need to. Just don't quit. And if you need help, I'm more than happy to meet with you one-on-one and go through whatever issues you have. Many of you have reached out to me, and we've done this, and we can even do this through FaceTime too, okay? All right, you guys, positive energy, positive vibes, believe in yourself for the love of God, give some gratitude, and I will talk to you all very soon. See you guys.